You ever stop and think about how English kind of feels like a jumble of different languages all mashed together? Well, you're not wrong about that at all. And a huge reason why goes back to one single world-changing year, 1066. So let's dive into how just one year totally reshaped, well, pretty much our entire vocabulary.
See, the story of the English language is really a story of invasion, of conquest, and this amazing cultural fusion. So the big question we're tackling here is pretty wild when you think about it. How did one battle, fought almost 1,000 years ago, fundamentally change the very words I'm using and you're hearing at this exact moment?
Okay, the best way to wrap your head around this is to picture the year 1066 as a massive dividing line in history. It's like a before and after. Before 1066, you've got Anglo-Saxon England, a place with really deep dramatic roots. But after, you get something totally new, Anglo-Norman England. This is where French culture starts to fuse with all those older traditions. So 1066, that's the pivot point. It's where everything changes.
All right, Section 1, a crown without an heir. So what kicked off this whole monumental shift? Well, like a lot of great historical dramas, it all started with a classic problem, a power vacuum right at the very top.
So, in January of 1066, the English king, a guy named Edward the Confessor, dies. And here's the massive problem. He didn't have any kids. Back in the 11th century, a kingdom without a clear heir, well, that was a kingdom that was just ripe for chaos. His death kicked off this huge power struggle that pulled in ambitious rulers from all over, each one ready to grab the prize. And this is where the conflict really heats up, because you've got two main guys with really powerful claims. On one side, you have Harold Godwinson. He's a top English earl, and he was actually chosen and crowned by England's own Council of Nobles. Sounds pretty legitimate, right? But across the English Channel, you've got William the Duke of Normandy, and he claimed that the old king had actually promised the crown to him, and get this, that Harold himself had sworn an oath to support William's claim. So with one throne and two very powerful claimants, yeah, a clash was pretty much inevitable.
Okay, Section 2, the battle for England. With two powerful men wanting the same thing and absolutely no room for compromise, this whole dispute over the English crown wasn't going to be settled with words. It was going to be settled with swords.
And that brings us to the big one, the Battle of Hastings, October 14, 1066. William's Norman forces slam into the English army, and the outcome? It was brutal. It was absolute. A decisive Norman victory. King Harold himself was killed in the fighting. And just like that, the last Anglo-Saxon king of England was gone. For William, the path to the throne was now wide open.
And he did not waste any time. On Christmas Day of that same year, William was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey. The conquest was official. The Anglo-Saxon era of English history was over.
So, Section 3, the Norman takeover. But look, winning the battle, that was just the first step. To really control England, William and the Normans had to completely remake the country's power structure, basically from the ground up.
Now this is the really crucial part. This wasn't just a change of king, it was a total regime change. The Normans systematically took apart the old Anglo-Saxon power base. They kicked out the English elites and replaced them with their own Norman buddies. They redistributed pretty much all the land under this new feudal system, and they brought in their own French-speaking government and legal structures. England was being reshaped in Normandy's image.
And all of this total political and social takeover, it had a consequence that I guarantee no one at the time could have possibly predicted. It led to one of the most dramatic transformations any language has ever gone through.
This created this fascinating new linguistic reality in England. All of a sudden, you got two languages existing side by side, but in this really strict hierarchy. The new ruling class, the aristocrats, the lawyers, the government officials, they all spoke Anglo-Norman French. That became the language of power. Meanwhile, the huge majority of the population, the common people, they kept speaking Old English, which was now basically seen as the language of the powerless.
So for the next few hundred years, you've got these two languages living together. And, inevitably, they start to blend. But we're not talking about a small overlap here. This was a flood. We're talking over 10,000 French words pouring into English. It permanently changed the very DNA of the language. And you can totally see the power dynamic in the words themselves. The Normans brought in a whole new legal system. So the English language just adopted their word for it, justice.
Same thing happened with how the country was run. These new councils and assemblies were set up, so English speakers started using the Norman word parliament. See, these weren't just new words, they were the vocabulary of control.
And this is my favorite example because it shows just how deep this divide went. The Anglo-Saxon peasant out in the field, he raised a cow. That's an Old English word. But when that same animal was cooked and served to the Norman lord for dinner, it was called beef, from the French word bouffe. The English speaker raised the animal. The French speaker ate it. That entire social structure is preserved right there, in the words we still use for our food today. It's incredible.
So what happens when you take the Germanic grammar and structure of Old English, and you just inject this massive dose of French vocabulary? Well, one language doesn't just replace the other. Instead, you get a brand new hybrid, Middle English, and that is the direct ancestor of the language we're speaking right now.
And this new language and the blended culture it represented started to tell a totally new kind of English story, which we can really see popping up in the art and the literature of the time.
One of the most amazing artifacts from this whole period is the Bayeux Tapestry, and our source material has just the perfect way to describe it. Think of it as a super old graphic novel. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's this enormous embroidered cloth that visually tells the entire story of the conquest. It's a stunning piece of political propaganda, really, all told from the Norman point of view.
This new culture produced a really diverse and fascinating literary scene. On one hand, you had works like The Owl and the Nightingale, a super clever poem written in that new, emerging Middle English, reflecting the actual language of the people. But at the same time, the Norman aristocracy was enjoying tales of courtly love, like the Lays of Marie de France, written in their own Anglo-Norman French. The whole blended world, with its different classes and its different cultures, it's all right there in what they were reading.
So, you see, the Norman Conquest, it wasn't just a battle for a crown. It was an event that put the English language on a completely new track, making it so much richer and way more complex. It's just a powerful reminder that language is always evolving. And it really makes you wonder, right? If one single battle could so radically reshape our words 1,000 years ago, what forces, technology, social media, global culture, what forces are reshaping the language we're all speaking right now?